Gear up as Cash Miller and a team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone. This is Cash Miller, the host of Marketing Masters and CEO of Titan Digital. We've got a great episode. We're going to be talking branding and really building your brand voice. I've got with me Vicky Winkler. She's with the Marketing Shop, and she has got, of all the guests I've had on here, she has by far the most experience. Yeah, and she's been at it like 30 years, and of all the people that I've talked to, I don't think I'm going to have anybody that has more knowledge about building, your brand and, how do you build that brand voice and stuff, the importance it is to your company and stuff. Vicky, it is great to have you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, as you said, I've been in the field of marketing for 30 plus years. I also, as we talked before the show, I'm an adjunct professor of marketing and entrepreneurial management. So I got my degree in marketing management. And so it's been my whole life. And so I own the Marketing Shop where we do branding, graphic design, and printing. And I have a staff of 4 designers, and we work with a lot of clients in a number of different industries. And I'm really super excited about the show. I love talking about branding and kind of imparting some knowledge on folks, and hope they'll pick up some tidbits that they can use going forward.
Yeah. And it's really important. You've been at it for a long time. So you've got to have a real passion for, branding itself and working with companies and such. And, when we're talking, branding, a lot of people can misconstrue, like logo design with brand. They think that the logo that you see is the brand. And that's not really what we're talking about. The logo is an element of it, but there's so much more to branding a company than just design, right? So we want to get into that today, of really differentiating and helping people understand, what they can really do with a brand, especially small businesses, because it's like really a neglected thing. So I want to start why don't you take us into a little bit of a deep dive of the elements of a brand first, just so that everybody is, really clear on what is involved, in kind of putting together a brand, but what are the aspects of it?
Sure. Yeah. So, what I usually go over with clients and talk about is the 4 major touch points. So there's print, there's electronic or digital, there's physical, and then there's the human factor. So yeah, just as you said, your brand is not just your logo. Your logo is one very small, very, very important, but a small component of your whole brand image. So when we talk about the print aspect, that's the obvious stuff. That's your brochures, your business cards, any type of communication pamphlets that you have, flyers that you put out. All those things are super important. They should have your colors, your fonts, the imagery, your brand. Everything is nice and consistent, and that's a super important factor. And then, of course, as we're all super familiar, there's the whole electronic. And electronic is not only just the ones we think about, which is your social media, your website, maybe email marketing, but it's also email communications. It's Zoom calls. It's your website. So it's anything out in the electronic world. And that all is super important too. The last thing you want is to be at a meeting and hand somebody your business card and for them to go back and then go to your website and say, am I in the right place? Absolutely, you don't want that reaction. You want to make sure that it all feels really comfortable, and it's sort of an intangible, but when all that stuff fits together, people don't really think about it. But when it doesn't fit together, that's when they're like, oh, this doesn't seem to make sense to me. And the same, goes into the physical environment. So if you have a brick and mortar location, you want to make sure when people walk into your lobby that they've got a business card, they've met you, maybe they've been to your website. And when they walk in that lobby, you want them to know, am I in the right place? The logo that they see. And how many times have you gone to a business and the logo or the name on the door, it's like, oh, is this the right, am I suite 275? And so when they walk in the lobby and when your staff greets them, when they go into the patient rooms, you want to make sure all of that stuff is also consistent with your brand. And then the last part of it is the human factor. The one that's probably the hardest to control, but this is how your employees and even how yourself conducts themselves in a Zoom call. How they answer the phone, how they handle an email communication to a client, how they conduct themselves on the telephone or in a text, because, I know a lot of my staff, they're texting clients and even their texts need to be professional. And, we always tout, one of our strengths is attention to detail. And I always tell my staff, well, your emails and your texts better be attention to detail too, because it all is part. And so all those things taken together are all part of your brand image. And there's probably more things that I haven't thought of or mentioned. But yeah, it's way more than just a logo for sure.
Okay, so let's dive into you already mentioned brand consistency, and really getting it across different things, because you brought up print, and you've got the different things you're going to use. But when you combine print and you combine digital, like what are the things you need to be doing and steps to take to make sure you're consistent across platforms and, different types of advertising you may use? What are the tips that you would give to make sure that everything stays consistent on everything?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say the first thing is to make sure that when you get your logo designed, or if you've had it designed some time ago, is to get a brand guideline booklet that outlines the fonts, and make sure you get your font files that you can install them yourself on your own system. So that if you happen to do a DIY flyer and throw it together yourself, that at least you're using the fonts, the colors, and even part of the brand booklet that we put together for our clients is we have imagery so that, so sometimes, a client will want the cutout pictures that are isolated, backgrounds. And so maybe that's part of their brand and kind of part of their look. And so making sure that everybody who is going to be creating anything for your organization has that brand guideline booklet. And when a new employee starts, show them the brand guideline booklet, have them read through it, look through it, go through it with them, and making sure that everything that goes out is consistent with that brand booklet. And I think it's part too of just having a real honesty about your materials and saying, hey, you know what? We know that our social media is lacking a little bit, that maybe we've had, if, we're a nonprofit organization. And a lot of times this will happen at nonprofits, is that they'll say, hey, if you're at an event, just snap a selfie and then post it up on the Facebook page. And it's like, no. Somebody should be the filter. It should be filtering through, and that they can look at that and make sure that it's on brand with what you want to communicate. So, lots of just posting a lot is not as effective as posting less, but having it be on brand. And so again, it's kind of going through those four touch points and being really honest with yourself about, hey, are we falling short in this area and what do we need to do?
That's it. You bring up an interesting point, with the social media stuff, because part of a brand is often the voice that they develop too. It's not just, like I say, we think of brands as being too much on the visual side, but when you're developing a brand, you're also considering how it's going to speak to potential customers and such, and going to be speaking in general in the public. So want to dive into that a little bit. How are you considering, that brand voice to develop it? How do you keep it on track so you don't, get off, like say I sound this way here, and then I go over here and I sound, totally different? Because some of the best ones, I mean, they've had all sorts of, voices and campaigns and such, that keep things on brand. So if you're a small or mid-sized business, this matters to them too. So what do they go for the route?
Yeah. So I would say to have a set point, mark it on your calendar that you're going to do, again, that deep, honest assessment of each of the four touch points. And we have some resources on our website. We're actually developing some more that are kind of checklists. Right now, they're focused on the marketing materials. And so we have one for the medical industry and one for the nonprofit industry. And it walks a business owner through all of the different marketing materials and has them look at that and say, okay, our patient forms, how are they? Are they effective? Are they not effective? The brochures that we have in our lobby, are they effective? If they're not effective, why are they not effective? And so it forces them to go through each one of those elements. And I suggest and it depends on the organization and your company and how big it is, but at least every 6 months and the first time you do it, it's going to take the longest. But once you kind of have that down, to go back and reevaluate that. And again, the print, the electronic or the digital, the physical, and the human factor. And I know even in my organization, in my company, we're not that big, but it's important for me. And we'll have our weekly team meetings. And a lot of times it's one of these 4 touch points that we're talking about, whether it's email communication. And those are some of I think that the underestimated things, the things that people don't always think about, like that are part of their brand. It's sort of those intangibles. But again, if you sit down and you have a method and a time, and at certain stages that you're going to do an assessment of them. And then again, like I said, the first time you do it, it's going to take a lot longer, but then to kind of do those update assessments and just to have it on your calendar, make sure you do it. And we all get busy and we all get behind, but don't let it slide for too long. And so again, there's going to be times where you're going to look at, and I know this happened to us, is that our social media had kind of slid a little bit and we were not being super consistent. We weren't posting as frequently as we should. We weren't getting engagement because we weren't looking at it specifically. And we said, hey, we really need to do this. And so then when we assessed it 6 months later, it was like, okay, social media, we're doing a lot better on that. But email communication, we need to work on. And I'll even send my staff to different trainings or workshops. We had a proofreading workshop, a writing workshop, an email communication. And there's all kinds of things on the internet that you can, that your staff can sign up for to just improve in those areas that you found that you're lacking in.
I think it's interesting. One of the things with brand voice is, don't also focus too much on one platform and neglect another one, because you mentioned email marketing a couple of times, and you can end up speaking with a certain voice on your social media, and you want to be carrying it over, to your email marketing and any other avenue. So if you're saying things in a certain way, even your copy that you're using in your print pieces and such, the voice can be carried over, and you want to stay consistent between these things, regardless of the type of material it is. Like say, whether it's an email newsletter, and you don't want to speak a different way to people, because often you're going to have people that are receiving the newsletter that also might be following you on social media, and you could be communicating in 2 different styles.
Yep. Yeah. So I know in our office, I have one individual who does the copy for our social media. She does the copy for our email marketing. She does the copy for the website, and she does the copy for we write a blog for a couple of nonprofit associations. And so again, because we wanted to make sure that brand voice is the same. Now, yeah, sometimes I need to pull another one of my staff in to maybe write a section on the website. But we always make sure we run it by her to make sure that it's written in the way that we want it to be portrayed. So it's really important, because people they're going to come across a blog, or they're going to come across your website, and if it's not written in the same way, again, it's sort of that intangible where you don't even realize not necessarily the damage it might be doing, but the lost potential that it might have if everything feels really good and comfy to people, and they know that they're in the right place, and it just feels right, and it helps to build your brand.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned there. It's not necessarily that you're damaging your brand. You're not necessarily doing that, but you are losing potential. Because of the fact, damaging would be that you would say something really bad, and that can damage it, whatever you might do. But, you're losing potential because of the fact that you're off message. Let's say you're speaking differently in one venue than you are in another one. And that, the reason that like big brands, you think of why they work, why they kind of get implanted and stuff in our brains and everything. It's not just a matter of that they do it a lot. They're seeing advertisements constantly. It's the way that they're saying things, the things that they're saying. I always think of like some of the best. Whether it's a jingle or a slogan or something, but that was part of what they made the voice. So they kept using it, throughout. I think one of the best campaigns probably is like the original Got Milk campaign and stuff, where, but they used it consistently everywhere and they did not vary from the message. Right. And, so it was incorporating into everything they were doing. So even to this day, which they've gotten away from, they've, changed their messaging and stuff since, but that campaign ran successfully for years. Right. And to this day, you remember it, and I think that's really important is people need to be aware of whatever channels you're using to market to people, keep things consistent. Even if you're going to change your style some, you have to change it across the board, not just in one particular area.
For sure. Yeah. And I think the other thing too that companies need to recognize is internally you might get bored with your brand because you see it every day. You use it every day. You walk in the lobby and it's the same in the lobby. And you know what? Probably if you're getting bored with your brand, it's probably good because it probably means you're using it consistently. You're using the same colors, you're using the same font. And I know we work with marketing individuals that are at organizations that are outsourcing to us to do the graphic design. Sometimes they're like, well, can we add a little bit of green maybe? And we're like, no, you can't add a little bit of green because it's not part of your brand. Yeah. So, but everything is always the burgundy and the gray. It's like, yep, and we're going to keep it going, the burgundy and the gray until maybe someday down the road, we're ready to rebrand, but we're not right now. And so for right now, it's going to feel boring to you, but we're going to, and you can do a lot of things to make the communications not boring, but yet still be nice and consistent with your brand.
Yeah, I think your color example is really good because, I'll go back to a big, just using a big brand, Coke is, it's red and white. Pepsi is red, white, and blue. They have been consistent with that forever. And there's a reason for it. They don't incorporate a bunch of other colors and such, and some of the greatest brands, they don't, that's just what it is, but that's how you know them. And by staying on message like that, including with what they do with their colors and stuff and the way that they develop their materials and even the style that those materials, because, you do a lot of print pieces and such, and there's going to be a style to how those print pieces for a particular company are developed, and it may be based on how the logo is or whatever, but you're not going to go varying it, a great deal, even if it's a brand new piece.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite brands is the Home Depot. I think that they are one of the most consistent. I mean, you walk into a Home Depot. Yeah. What color is everything?
Everything's orange. Yeah.
We all know it. We see it. We see it on their postcards. And they shake things up with maybe different imagery and photography. And of course, they've got tools and all that fun stuff that they can show. But super consistent in their brand consistency. And it just speaks to my heart.
Yeah, and actually, if you take that and you compare it to like Lowe's, is more of a blue, white and stuff. But in all honesty, put those two stores together, and the orange is way more attractive because it is more out of the norm. But they've made that part of their voice. When you see that particular orange, and I'm sure that they've got, it's a specific color code for that particular orange. But when you see it, it's Home Depot, whereas a blue and white is, a lot more common. And so Lowe's is not going to stand out as much. I mean, Lowe's has, of course, been successful, but I think Home Depot, I say, you always know. Yeah, it's a given. And so, when you can do that with it, it goes to your point about color. You don't go injecting things that don't belong.
Right.
So how do you work storytelling into, building a brand and the voice and such? Storytelling is, that can be, especially for a smaller business, that can be a lot more difficult to do. It's one thing to put my colors and my brand out there. It's another to post only certain types of things on social media or in my emails. But storytelling it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's become more valuable as well because we're all inundated with so many marketing messages every day. And so, and the onset of social media and everything in the electronic world has just exacerbated that. We have billboards, and then we've got our phones in front of us, and we've got, we go to the mailbox and we have, marketing materials, coming at us that way. And so we're constantly inundated. It's that. So when all of a sudden, though, when you're scrolling along social media, and, I will scroll social media from a business standpoint. I go in and, we can all get down the rabbit hole in social media.
Sure.
I will sometimes say to myself, I'm going specifically to this group that I'm in, or whatever it might be in my social media, and I'm going to look through just that. And so a lot of it is kind of the same types of posts. And all of a sudden you come across a story, maybe it's got some nice music, and, as long as it's a short snippet, which is important too. But all of a sudden, wow, that stands apart. And when you're looking at, so one field that I find is really saturated is the financial planning. And so financial planners, will have posts of a retired couple holding hands on the beach.
Yeah, right. I know exactly which photo you're talking about.
Oh my goodness gracious! I will see the same stock photo used over and over again.
Yeah, they both wear like white outfits too, as they're walking along the beach.
Exactly, and they're they're a good looking older couple, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're happy because they've retired with millions of dollars, but then all of a sudden, when you have a video that plays, that's it can be quick. And I know I have a video guy that I know, and he says, don't worry about being perfect when you post a video. Just make sure you're posting video, which, okay, I think that you need to at least make sure it's good and not damaging.
Yeah.
But what a difference when it brings out that personality. And there's certain industries that you really need to do that. And, even for us in our office, what we try to post on social media, we have little animated posts that are, what is Derek, the senior graphic designer, doing today on his job? Or we'll have, hey, did you know how we actually design a mascot for, for a company? And so those things bring that personality. And when you see people's faces, you hear the other really good, impactful thing about the storytelling is for nonprofit organizations. It's that complex sort of story that is very hard to tell in print. But when you have a video of, or even if it is in print, a story of a recipient of services and how it's impacted them. And this is where video is so powerful, because you can sense the emotion, you can sense the impact that, whatever your service or product has had. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a nonprofit. It can be any type of product or service, because it really all comes down to providing benefits, and it's people selling to people. And the stories are the things that you really can't bring to life in print or just plain social media without telling a story. And so it's a great new kind of a new way to market that really brings the personality of organization, which again is a huge part of the brand as well. It's just another piece in the puzzle.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned with the video stuff, because we've done a little bit of we do quite a bit of video production, but one type of video is known as a brand anthem. And I don't know if you've ever seen them. I know you've seen them. You may not realize it. But a brand anthem basically does that. It tells the story. The product is in the video, but the video is not about the product. It's about the use and the adventure and things like that. So the best examples are usually like hiking. Okay. So you take a company like the North Face, and they're all, jackets and, whatnot, but they're all hiking gear and whatnot. So you barely see the brand. What you see is the hiker and the climb and the adventure of it. And then at the very end, you'll get a mention of the brand, but you'll have something that goes along of, it's about the great outdoors, and that's it, and North Face. Yeah. And that's all you'll get, because the whole video, whatever it is, 30 seconds or a minute long or whatever, the entire story is about getting out and, experiencing that particular adventure. And that's the thing is you can tell with your brand those kinds of stories. And with video, you can really get into them if you want, because you can even, big companies, yeah, of course, they've got large budgets for doing those things, but you can do those kinds of things for a lot less if you really want. It's just a matter of the kind of story that you want to tell. So, and you can really incorporate it into a brand, and you make things more than just, hey, here's my product.
Right, right. And people really like to see that behind the scenes of how things, and there's a lot of companies that do that. But having a videographer come out for a half a day and just kind of videotape each of the people at the workstations working, and then you get them to edit and do little snippets, but then you can put all those little snippets on your social media, put some on your website.
Yeah, that's a great example too, because if you're going to make part of your brand about, the people that work for the company and the things that you do, and potentially, if you do something that kind of gives back to the community, whatever it may be, you can then chop that up, use those clips and such, and you can make, and it helps amplify things. It gives you the content you need for those platforms and stuff, and continue to tell the story. And that's how you weave the story in with the brand. That's how you use that storytelling aspect. Right. And there's so much you can do there.
Right, right. And I know for, say an organization that, maybe started out with, a single individual, and they launched this little company, and then all of a sudden they started to grow, and they have people working for them. And what will happen is sometimes I have a friend who started a heating and cooling business. And, as he grew, then he was not always the one who went out to give the estimate for the furnace or do the furnace checks. And so he was struggling with the clients that had known him for so many years. Were like, well, I only want so-and-so to come out because you're the one who's always done my stuff. And so they did a campaign where they did the videos of the other individuals that were coming out and doing service to create that, hey, look, they do a great job too. And you don't always have to have just the owner of the company be the one that's going to service your furnace or whatever the service might be. That we have very qualified, credible individuals that also work for us. So if they show up, they're going to be doing a great job for you as well. And so it really made that comfort level a lot better for especially those clients that had been around for a while for them. So that was really successful for them to do.
I think that's a really good example, because it's, a lot of businesses, especially when they're very small and they do start to grow, they can kind of be stuck where the owner and stuff is kind of the brand essentially. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you might want to get to a rebrand, or at least a rethink of how you're doing things, because, people think of rebrand, I changed my logo and stuff. Well, you could probably leave that part alone. Because that's what they've seen visually. Okay. But how you're speaking to your customers is part of your brand. And that could be the pivot. So that, like in your example, it's, hey, the owner cannot be here for everything, but the owner has hired all of these people and vetted them, and essentially, has trust in them. And these people are here to help you, the same as the owner would.
Right. Yeah, we have a resource on our website that talks about when is it time to rebrand, and it kind of helps people walk through, some of those reasons. And that's part of it is you've had a significant shift in your business, but you're still utilizing the same brand. That, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to rebrand, but sometimes you do, or it can be extremely valuable to do that. And again, it's, when companies rebrand, all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, what's going on here? There has been some shift, some change. They might not know what it is, but it sends the message that there's something, and it typically, if it's done right, will send the message that there's something bigger and better happening here. And so, hey, I haven't thought about them for a while. Maybe I need to kind of take another peek. So that can be very successful. Again, there's been some shift in the business that causes where a rebrand might be time for that.
That's a really good point, because it's often, people don't realize when they need to make that, that shift, or the shift has happened, but the rebrand or the change of voice, change of messaging, needs to, follow suit. Mm-hmm. And people get stuck, and you can end up, you have that kind of a problem, like you pointed out, for that particular business owner. And then it's like, well, that was, the catalyst for them. But also, so as a business owner, you have to be able to recognize what that key point was. When did that shift happen? And then what do you do about it? And often it is, a different way of thinking for the brand. If you, want to be, bigger, if you have more reach, if you're trying to be more well-known and stuff, because a lot of businesses, like say, when they start small, are built not just around the owner, but also if you think of the branding, the voice and stuff, but also in this case, the imagery, it might not reflect where you're going either. So it could be something where you have to make a full shift.
Right. And that's where just kind of stepping back and doing an objective analysis of all these types of items. I mean, because there's a lot of things that owners don't think about, well, why would we rebrand? Well, there's, let's look at these 10 different things and see if any of those apply. Boy, if 7 out of 10 of them apply to you, well, then maybe it is time for your company to rebrand.
Yeah, I think, even like I say, whether it's, I won't say necessarily large, but some of the longest existing companies, have had multiple, pivots throughout, and some of them very large and successful and stuff, I think one of the more obvious or at least memorable ones is Apple. Like I say, I can still envision the original Apple, and you see that, and you've got the colors and you've got the way they spoke, and they are, honestly, they were a computer company. Now they're really an electronics company. Computers is a product that they have, and so while we still see the Apple, it's got, and they're a great, I think, example of really incorporating the brand. Look at the computers, just like look at the styling of how everything is manufactured, then look at their logo. Yeah. And you can see how the two, I mean, they're all, it's so, I don't know, simpatico. I mean, the logo and stuff and the way the computers and the color schemes they use and just everything is so consistent. Yeah. And we kind of take it for granted, but they've put a ton of thought into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And just that, they have the benefit of a very large budget.
Sure.
But they have also successfully, because really, what does an Apple say about electronics?
Mm-hmm.
But yet they have put it on everything. And they have made sure that it's backed by, and they don't focus on the Apple. The Apple just happens to be the icon, but it's all about how what does that case look like when you get it, and the packaging, when you go to the store and all that stuff. It's Apple. And you don't really think about the fact that it's a piece of fruit.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, now, and actually, if you just said the word Apple, people would, how many would say, okay, I'll have a piece of fruit, or, hey, I'll have a computer. Like they've made it so synonymous, with their company and their brand itself and everything, that you would not, if I just said the word, you would not know which one I'm referring to.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And to take over a whole piece of fruit, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, that's been around for, millennia, so yeah, to be able to, be side by side pretty much. They've really done it. And yeah, they've got a large budget to make it happen. But I think that's the thing is like for businesses, whether they're large or small, to some degree, those things can happen for everybody. I mean, so to like wrap things up here, what would be your like key takeaways for what companies can do? Like, where should they be starting to look at their own brand? Because you've talked about rebrand and just evaluating where you're at. And how would you go through if you decide that this is the thing you want to do? Okay, what are some of the steps you should be taking?
Yeah. So I go back to, starting with the 4 touch points and having a really honest assessment. And I mean, really honest, that a company needs to step back, and you need to bring in a couple of other folks, and you need to maybe bring in some folks who are from the outside. And you know what? The best sources can sometimes be family and friends, and just say, really honestly, tell me, this is what the company does. This is some of the, whatever it might be, some of the marketing material, some of the branding, and just kind of sit with that for a while and make an honest assessment of, how really are we doing? And then get an outside opinion from an expert that can say, we've had people come to us and say, we're not really crazy about our logo. We're not sure if we need it. And we've looked and said, it's not the logo that's the problem. It's just the consistency of applying your brand image with the use of your logo to all of the other things that you're doing. So again, getting lots of opinions and being really honest about what you're doing and deciding, and then having the bravery to say, you know what, if I really need to rebrand, I need to just do it. And we've had plenty of companies. I had a company that would have been around for 45 years with the same logo. And they of course had a lot of anxiety, a lot of apprehension about rebranding, but they knew it was what they needed to do. And it worked. It was right. It was more contemporary. And 6 months after we did it, he said, you know what? I honestly sometimes have a hard time thinking what the old logo looked like, because the new logo is so in line with our target market, with where we're going, the new direction of the company, that it just makes so much more sense and it just works so well. And so again, I always tell that story because, people can have some anxiety about rebranding, but when it's the right thing to do and the time is right, then you're doing yourself a disservice by not doing it.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's like take a hard look. And I love that. Yeah, you need to be really honest with yourself and definitely solicit a lot of other people's opinions and such and see what they think, because you're biased, and you're going to probably be loyal to what you have existing. And so you have to often be convinced, to do it. Well, get as many opinions as you can, see what other people are actually saying. Don't make assumptions about what you think they're going to say. Yeah. So I think that is great. So Vicky, this has been a great conversation. How would people get a hold of you?
The best place is to go to our website, which is tms.marketing. And there's no .com on the end. It's just T as in Tom, M as in Mary, S as in Sam .marketing. And there's some free tools on the resources tab and contact information if you need to get a hold of me. But it's Vicky, Vicky, at tms.marketing.
And you are a brand expert. It has been great having you on. I think this has really been a great conversation. And it's really, I love it that we can bring on such experts and such. And the experience that you bring to the table is just wonderful. Okay, so my name is Cash Miller. I'm the host and the CEO of Titan Digital. We've been talking branding and really, everything about it. A brand is more than your logo. Be willing to take a really hard look at it. So I hope everybody gets something out of this episode. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. There we go.